Jen, I so eager to talk to you about this because this is one of those moments, I think, for insiders. You've been in this kind of you've been in government the way Liz Cheney has. She's worked in administration,
and you have,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. Before she went to Congress, she worked in the administration. Grew up in it in a sense with her father, and to see someone who stays anchored all the way through all of that experience, so that when it comes down to it. And it comes down to a choice of her oath of office versus her re-election campaign. She chooses her oath of office.
That's right, Lawrence. And I think as Rachel started that interview, which was so fascinating to watch, acknowledging it's a little weird to see our friend Rachel Maddow interviewing the daughter of Dick Cheney, right? But here we are because she stood up for democracy and wasn't shy about telling the truth. There's so many things. I haven't read the book yet because the book comes out tomorrow, and I'm very eager to do that. But one of the things was in the excerpts that stuck out to me, and as a reminder of that, is the scene of Dick Cheney going to the Capitol the floor of the Capitol a year after January 6th to commemorate that day, and being shocked there weren't other Republicans there, and having an embrace with Nancy Pelosi of all people. And that just tells you a lot about Liz Cheney, about what she's been willing to do that's very difficult. Really, she was third in line in the Republican caucus, and what she did meant she was, of course, no longer in leadership, no longer in Congress. But I loved so many aspects of that interview. One of them, just to go down the nerdy government rabbit hole with you because this is a safe place to do, that I think we'll be talking about a lot more in the next couple of days, is what she mentioned about the transition of power, the peaceful transition of power. And it's so important to remember at a time when there's so much craziness that Donald Trump is saying and doing, that there are normal transitions of power. There's normal disagreements, even strong visceral ones, as you were just talking about with Rachel. I came in with Barack Obama when the Bush administration was leaving. Lots of strong disagreements there about many policy issues, including the Iraq War. It was a peaceful transition. It was a graceful transition. They welcomed us with open arms and wanted to prepare us to govern the country. That is how it is supposed to work. And I thought it was interesting she mentioned that. My ears perked up because pardon power, I think, is something that is basically all powerful, as you know well, Lawrence, that a president has. That historically, for the most part, and there are exceptions, has not been abused. That power in the hands of a second term for Donald Trump is almost one of the scariest things. And the fact that she mentioned that, it's just a reminder of how important it is for us to pay attention to that.
Let's listen to the part of the interview toward the beginning when Liz Cheney was describing a few days before January 6th, when she started to get the feeling about what was coming. Let's listen to this.
I had been getting these hints, through the months after the election of sort of glimpses into things that they were attempting to do. And each time sort of I saw something come up, and I kept thinking, and I think a lot of us kept thinking, all right, look, he's going to bring these court challenges, but of course, once the courts have ruled, he will concede and we'll move on. And each time you thought we were at an end, we weren't really at an end. And so I think this was probably the most chilling moment where it was suddenly real that, this wasn't just some sort of a PR effort to suggest that he hadn't lost the election. There was a very real plan to stop us from counting legitimate electoral votes. And frankly, that realization and that recognition, it was nauseating because it was so scary. Wait a minute, this is what they're going to try to do.
Jen, it's such a vivid moment. It's just such a sickening idea that she's listening in on a phone call about this strategy and hearing it for the first time.
That's right. And thinking, which is so striking, this can't possibly happen, really. I mean, that's what I heard in her answer. There's going to be some shenanigans. We know he's arguing the election was rigged, but this can't possibly happen. And listening to her really brought me back to that day and the day before I was working on the presidential transition. And we thought, and we obviously didn't have as much insight as her, of course, but we thought there would be some shenanigans on the floor, some delay tactics, right? But never factored in, of course, what happened on January 6th. And it's all a reminder, listening to Liz Cheney talk and even just listening to Donald Trump talk, especially over the last couple of weeks. He is telling us exactly what he's going to do. So we should listen to him, right? And though we think it's not possible, the system will protect us from it, the system is not equipped always for Donald Trump. And when he's telling us things like he's not going to listen to the judicial system or process, as she just reiterated in that interview, we need to listen to him.
Yeah, let's listen to Liz Cheney's description, hypothetical description of how it would work, how Donald Trump is basically promising to run things if he's in the presidency again. Let's listen to that.
Imagine a situation where, you know, the people around him, the lawyers that he's hired in the administration, you may have some who would, you know, you could imagine them stepping up and saying, wait, we can't take that action, we can't do that for legal reasons, and the president combining both his determination to ignore the rulings of the courts with offering pardons to people, you know, who do his bidding. And it's a really toxic and very dangerous mix. And I think that people need to take seriously the potential that he will do that, because, in fact, we're watching him and listening to him say he will do it now.
And Jen, if that message is going to get through to Republican voters, it seems that it has to come from a Republican voice.
Yes, I think that's true. And I also think it's important for people in this moment to understand. She referenced pardon power. I know I've referenced this earlier. Technically, any president has the power to pardon anyone they want. Historically, through the administrations I worked in, and probably during the time while you were working on Capitol Hill, what would happen there would be a legal vetting process that went through the Department of Justice to ensure you weren't intervening in investigations, that they met all the qualifications, that this is a person who should be recommended for pardon. That's a good check in the system. That's not what Donald Trump did, and that's not what Donald Trump will do. What does that mean? All of these people who are helping him, who might help him attempt to overturn an election, he intends to pardon them. And he doesn't need, there is not a check in the system to prevent him from doing that, legally, technically. There is a historical precedent, but there's not a check in the system. And I think that's just important for people to know and understand the risks of that in this moment.
Jen, you have an interview scheduled coming up with Liz Cheney. When is that?
That is coming up next Monday at 8 p.m.
Monday at 8 p.m.
So I have plenty of time,
Great.
plenty of time to read the book. Very much looking forward to talking with her and diving into all of these pieces and all these questions. Can I mention one more thing, which
Please.
I'm sure stuck out to you given your time on the Hill, Lawrence? You know, Mike Johnson is someone I've been talking about. I know you've been talking about. She raised him. What's important about that is that in order for Trump to do what he wants to do, he needs enablers. Mike Johnson is second in line to the presidency. He was an advocate. He was a partner. He was a friend for what Donald Trump did on January 6th. That is a scary circumstance if Mike Johnson and Donald Trump are partners in this effort. And I thought it was very interesting she raised that because it is alarming. That's how the structure of power, of course, works.
I have a feeling on Monday night at 8, we're going to be hearing more about Liz Cheney's views of Mike Johnson and so much more. Jen, thank you.
I have a feeling.
Great.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Lawrence.
you very much, Jen. Really appreciate it. Thank you.